Hello, my name is Thomas Schwab, and welcome back to Hillbillies of Houston, your favorite learning podcast. Now, I want to give a special shout out to all you up and coming engineers, because you are the future of this world. Today's topic we will be discussing is the oil rig. Now, in our usual format, we will be going why they exist, how they work, and how this will affect you as an engineer of the future. So, let's talk about why they exist. Since most of the world is covered in water and rocks really do hold a lot of oil underwater simply because of the decomposition of natural materials like algae, bacteria, and fish, they all die at the bottom of the ocean, and all this carbon over time and because of heat and pressure, they turn into oil. And that's why underwater there is a significant amount of oil reserves. This is where an oil rig comes in. An oil company might send an oil rig several miles offshore where it will begin drilling. Now I will be discussing a topic that we've discussed in previous episodes, which is kind of the process of the oil and gas industry. So you begin with drilling. A drilling rig will be sent over where they will dig a wildcat well or an explanatory well, where it will basically explore and see if oil exists in a certain area. And if you do find oil in a certain area, then a production rig can come, or they can send the oil through a series of pipes to onshore where petroleum products will begin being produced. Now that we have gotten exactly why oil rigs exist, let's talk about how they work. So there are many different types of oil rigs, but let's be discussing the four main ones. There are barges, which they can operate between 5 and 15 meters in depth, but they can drill to a depth of around 6,000 meters. You also have jackup oil rigs, and they can drill down to about 9,000 meters, but they operate between 25 and 150 meters in water depth. And jackup rigs are basically rigs that can be moved from place to place, and they have legs that will connect them to the ground. So another type is fixed oil rigs. So they can be placed into the ground and they cannot move. Compared to a jackup oil rig, which the legs of the oil rig can be taken apart and the platform can be moved somewhere else where there is oil to be looked for as well. Then you have a semi-submersible oil rig, which will have two big pontoons at the bottom. These pontoons have no water in it to begin with, and a ship is attached to the oil rig, and they are moved to certain places where it's needed. Once it arrives at a certain place, water is partially infiltrates the pontoons where it becomes semi-submerged. This will help with the stability of the oil rig. There are also motors on these pontoons which help keep it in place, because if the oil rig starts to move around too much and you have a pipe that goes straight down into the earth, it can break that pipe, and this is why you want to keep it in one space. These motors, as well as complex computer systems, help keep it in one place when heavy winds and waves are hitting at it. You also have drilling ships. These drilling ships are essentially an oil rig that can be moved around, and it's a ship, and there's a hole in the middle of the ship where all the oil operations occur. These can drill up the farthest in depth at around 12,000 meters down and can operate between 500 and 3,600 meters in water depth. Now that we've discussed exactly how oil rigs work, let's talk about how this will affect you as an engineer. So, a petroleum engineer working on oil rig can make from a low around 90,000 to a high of around 137,000, with the 25th percentile being around $105,000. So it is very good pay. Life on an oil rig can be difficult because you are so far away from home and you're in the middle of the ocean. So if you have fear of oceans, I would certainly not recommend this job. So you have to wake up early and you work till late. It is a very hard job as it is a 12-hour shift. Now, one can't be really requested to sustain a 12-hour shift for that long. That is why, depending on the job, it can be 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, and you get paid in full for the year. So you basically work for 6 months out of the year, and you get paid in full. The reason for this is that they understand that it's a hard job, and you have to work for so long, and it's very dangerous because you're in the middle of the ocean with a lot of oil and gas products around you at all times that can easily light on fire. One of my favorite movies, Deepwater Horizon, I would highly recommend you guys watching this if you are interested in the topic, as it discusses one of the greatest disasters that have ever happened. Now, it is relatively safe to work on these. Let's talk about life on an oil rig. It is not as bad as you might think in terms of leisurely activities. You have to get up early, but you have a 2-hour break where you can go to a mess hall and they have a lot of food options. You can also go to a movie theater that they might have on certain oil rigs. They also have gyms that you can spend your time at too. So there's plenty to do on these oil rigs. Now, you have to really take your time because you will be putting yourself away from your family for several weeks, and you have to determine if that is worth your time. Now, let's move on to the next part of the podcast. Thank you. For the information I used on life on an oil rig as well as payment on an oil rig, I used Delmon and NAGPOL as my sources, while the information regarding how an oil rig works in different types of oil rigs, I used the Drilling Rig 101, PetroWiki, and What Other Types of Oil Rigs, printed by J.K. Drilling. Thank you.